Imagine being one of the largest coffee chains in the world. 28,000 stores, 76 countries, a brand so dominant that it became a part of daily life in America. Now, you go to a country that is obsessed with coffee and you think, hey, I've got this. And then you get rejected by the entire country. That is exactly what happened to Starbucks in Australia. And it was not a small failure. It was probably the most expensive and embarrassing retreat in the company's history. So, why are we starting a video about US GTM with the story of Starbucks? Because this is exactly what a lot of founders are doing when they go into the US. They start with assumptions. They think that the playbook that worked at home is going to translate exactly in the US, and they lose serious money before they figure out that it is simply not going to cut it. In this video, I'll be breaking down what successful founders get right about their US GTM. And at the end of this, you're not going to be looking at your US market entry in the same way. So, where did Starbucks actually go wrong in Australia? On paper, everything looked great. Global brand, unlimited capital, a playbook that had just conquered America. So they just naturally assumed that Australia would follow suit. And that assumption was the beginning of the collapse. Because Australia had its own coffee culture that Starbucks knew nothing about. Starbucks thought Australians wanted fast service, grab and go coffee, sugary drinks. What they did not know that the coffee culture in Australia was extremely deep and personal. Coffee was an experience. Local cafes remembered people. Baristas built relationships. Coffee was very intentional in Australia. And the Americans, with their fast service playbook, just did not know about this because they never bothered to find out. Founders entering the US make this mistake all the time. They think that the buyer is basically the same. They think the same playbook will work, that it will scale, and that if there is a problem, more budget will solve the problem. But here's the nuance that all of them are missing. Culture shapes the way that the buyer thinks, the way the buyer assesses, the way they trust, and the way they make a purchase. So, while Starbucks was shutting stores down across the country, another coffee chain was slowly expanding across Australia. Perhaps you've heard about them, Gloria Jeans. So, what was different about Gloria Jeans? It was definitely not the brand because Starbucks was obviously a bigger brand. It was not the capital because Starbucks had more money. The only thing that was different about Gloria Jeans was their approach to the market. In other words, their go-to market strategy. Now, they franchised very slowly through local Australians who understood the coffee culture in Australia. They adapted the menu for local Australian tastes. They studied the market before they scaled into it. So, this is the first rule of US GTM. Stop assuming that the market will adapt to you. You have to adapt to the market. When Starbucks realized that the initial stores weren't really working, they panicked. And like a lot of brands that panic, they decided that scaling was the solution. So by 2008, they actually opened 87 stores across Australia, in the suburbs, in regional areas, a Starbucks across every corner. They thought that ubiquity would build the brand. Instead, it killed any kind of premium positioning. It made it a completely forgettable experience. And you know what the equivalent of that is in your SaaS journey? Getting zero replies from your customers. Not even a I don't have this problem or I don't want your product. Now let's go back to the Starbucks story. Because the second mistake that they made is exactly where most founders are at today without even realizing it. Here's what is happening in most US GTM processes. If cold emails are not working, you buy a bigger list. If ads are not converting, you allocate a bigger budget. And if your pipeline is dead, you hire more SDRs. But the truth is, if your car is driving in the wrong direction, pressing harder on the accelerator only takes you further away from your destination. The teams that are winning in the US are not the busiest ones or the ones with the biggest budget. They are the ones who do not compromise on one thing, and that is clarity. They know exactly what is working, what is not working, and what is lying to them. Now, here's the third and most insidious mistake that Starbucks made in Australia. They had quite a bit of foot traffic. There was curiosity, and there was a lot of social media buzz. To somebody looking at the dashboard, it actually looked like the brand was working. But the problem is, foot traffic is not loyalty. Curiosity is not commitment. By the time Starbucks realized that people were trying them once and never coming back, it was too late. This is exactly where a lot of founders get stuck as well. So, somebody replies to you and they say, sounds interesting. They book a demo. After the demo, they say, I'll discuss it with my team and I will circle back to you. And you think something's finally moving and you celebrate. Unfortunately, in America, like in a lot of other cultures, politeness is just soft rejection and you have celebrated too early. Real validation looks completely different. It's about buyers actually asking you about pricing and pulling their team in for discussions without you prompting them. It looks like a buyer who actually describes the problem that you solve even better than you can describe it. If you don't know the difference between curiosity and commitment, you're actually going to build a pipeline of tire kickers that's really going to go nowhere. Now, Gloria Jeans actually understood this. They did not optimize for foot traffic or for curiosity. They optimized for repeat customers. How? Through local barista relationships, through signature drinks that people remembered and came back for. They tracked the signals that mattered, not the ones that just felt good to them. So, here is the third mindset shift you need to make. Stop celebrating interest. Start tracking and optimizing for intent. They are not the same thing. So, the reason that Starbucks failed in Australia was not because of their product. It's not like Australians don't like coffee. They definitely like coffee, but they like their coffee their way. And what Starbucks did was that they tried to beat the market down with their brand and with their capital. And instead, it was the market that beat them down. The fix starts with your thinking. If you have some humility and some curiosity along with your confidence, it will let you validate before you scale. And this is not just US GTM advice, it is the foundation that you need to crack and enter any new market. Now, when you do your US GTM right, you're actually going to be saving both time and money, sometimes years. That's why we built the US GTM Master Guide, because with that, you will know what real PMF in the US looks like, how to validate your assumptions before you scale, the signal hierarchy that's going to tell you which responses actually matter and which ones don't. The difference between this is not working and this just needs more time. This is the ammo that you need before you make a big bet on the US. The link to the guide is in the comments. Grab it and use it. In the next video, I'll be sitting down with Suraj, my co-founder, to look at the tactical side of things, the systems, workflows, and the infrastructure that will convert this approach into actual pipeline. Subscribe so that you don't miss it.